Take your CJ7 all the way to 11. Jeepin' with Cool Guy.
Let's start getting into suspension work. We're going to take off the front shocks. The reason we're going to do this now, as opposed to doing all the other pieces, is that the shocks really are there just to absorb. They're not necessarily holding anything in place. So it's a fairly simple process, at least on front shocks, very similar to the back shocks. Take off this top bolt nut, and then there's a bolt that runs through here and the bottom bushing, and then the shock comes out. And then there's 3 bolts that actually hold this arm onto the frame. Mine has a whole bunch of rust in it, so I'm excited to get this thing off and see what's actually underneath. This nut is 3/4 inch. Just like the back shock, there is a washer that goes in between the nut and the bushing. Potentially what will make this easier is trying to break the seal on that bolt that's stuck in here. There. Yeah, once you get that loosened up, now hopefully we can just tap it through. This way. Let's go straight at it. Old and rusted. This pretty much wipes the thing out of there. This thing's very well worn and dilapidated. Like everything else. This was a Rancho. Looks like 62891. Okay, shock's out. Cool. Let's take off the shock mounting arm. 9/16 inch bolt head. There is a nut on the back here, which I'm assuming will probably wind up spinning. Finally, a bolt that comes out without breaking. Now that's just peachy. The nut that's on the back here butts right up against the brake lines, at least where they've been run. So I have to use an open face crescent to hold on to the nut. Two for two. And it's going to go from the other direction just because I can actually get a better angle from the inside. And now the story gets really interesting. Let's see what we got going on here. I love the sound of rusted metal falling to the floor. Nothing like that is help instill confidence that your whole body hasn't completely fallen apart. So that essentially is just dirt, rust, good 35, 40 years, give or take. There's going to be some flaking. Yeah, there's some flaking on the frame here. That's unfortunate. Mildly solid. This little wire brush won't clean up. Alright, you've now removed your front shocks and your front shock mounting arms. Cool. I wanted to show you something real quick on these shock towers. And I think this happens on every one of these things because it wasn't designed for whatever reason to drain right. So you get all of this dirt and mud and everything that builds up back in here, and it just rusts out. So once I had put this thing through the electrolysis and sandblasted it, a hole popped out through here, just because this area just rusts through. So this got really thin. So didn't want to throw it out. These are kind of hard to find. So what I did is I took a drill and I drilled a hole down here. I drilled a hole where that hole was that had rusted through and made it big enough to where I got back to good metal. and then I drilled another hole up here, more like a slot, in an area that had rusted out. So the rest of this stuff is all good thick metal. But what I did is I basically made drain ports. So this will never rust out again because it will all drain out. Essentially, this is a ventilation system for your shock tower. Just thought that might be a good build for anybody out there that runs into the same problem, which is pretty much all of us.